Hello, we are here to talk about the SARS 1.0 POC. We're gonna be going through the proposal and seeing how we can validate that and also use Steve changes for the routing for routing. And Omar, I saw a bunch of the comments from you.
I think at that time when I added comment, I added one comment today, but it's not that relevant. It's about like when if the user is moved, maybe not important for now, or if the user or organization is moved. And my comments before were based on misunderstanding about like the main cluster wide. I didn't know that we will have main cluster wide tables in each database in each cell. So I think that's clarified now.
Yes, the idea of like main cluster wide is like isolate, so have like things to a single purpose, because technically, I think at some point, if you, for example, request, I want user ID 1000, they're gonna be, maybe we just implement some magic that's gonna always give you like an up-to-date or almost up-to-date user 1000 entry in the main cluster wide on your cell that is kept in sync with whoever is changing that. So like you had this example, like had this issue about mirroring some data into GitLab main cell for the purpose of the cross joins. But in the cell 1.0 and 1.5 and 2.0, the idea would be different, that like there is still like a single database. We just indicate some tables as a cluster wide, and those tables are secured. So you can only change the content of these tables if you are an authoritative cell. So for example, we know that user 1000 was created on the cell number 2. You cannot change the database entry on the cell 1. You can only do it on the cell 2. But you can request on each cell, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 5, 10, that I want to subscribe to this user 1000. And some magic maybe at some point in the future gonna provide this mirroring, or like, sorry, not really mirroring, like a selective replication of that information. So technically, in the cell 1.0, we kind of assume that this cluster-wide information, they don't need to be copied over to another cells because of how users work. This is user to organization. But at later point, the idea is like that we could perform like a selective replication on the things that you would subscribe from the cluster wide.
And this is not needed in cells 1.0.
No, it's not needed, but that was like the idea behind why we split into GitLab main cluster wide and GitLab main cell, but they still are in the same main database. Because at some point later, because things are unique, we could kind of replicate this information selectively if you would subscribe. So technically, I think that the primary case would be, let's say, I created my account on the cell 2, and there is like a GitLab Inc. organization on the cell 3. I want to start interacting with this GitLab Inc. and I want to join this organization as a core team member. Basically, in order to be able to interact with this GitLab Inc., we need to have this user record on the cell 3, right? So what would happen? We would notify some central authority to say that cell 3 wants to subscribe to user 1000. And somehow magically this user 1000 is gonna appear on the cell 3. So you could actually join this organization, GitLab Inc. on the cell 3, because this record would become replicated. And Now, if you change, I don't know, SSH key, you have to do it through cert2 because this is like your single source of truth about your user account. And once this change is being done, or like was done, it's gonna be broadcasted to all cells that are subscribing to that user. Because, for example, you requested to join organizations on other cells. And this information is gonna be updated or basically replicated onto another cell.
So the difference between our previous approach with like before like cells 1.0 is that we are not only now that we are not only distributing or splitting organizations across the cells, we are also splitting users across the cells.
Yes.
With
So
with selective replication, of course.
yes. So basically, previously you would have a cluster-wide database that contains the whole view of a cluster of the cluster-wide data. Cell 1.0 design goes into approach of casual consistency. I think this is what we settled on, that the information is distributed, but you know that this information is somewhere, but you need to know, like, you need to have like a routing information to know where you can find this information in a cluster, but you don't have like a central database that give you user 1000, who is it? We may have like a central database that's gonna have like a routing information that user 1000, I mean, this particular ID is on the cell 2, which is like a writing source, like the single cell that can write, and it's additionally on this another source, but it's not guaranteed that this user 1000 gonna be accessible from every cell. Because the cell 1.0 and 1.5 and 2.0 moves into a design where information accessible for the cell, like users, would only be the users that are in fact interacting with that cell. So for example, let's assume that at GitLab.com we have 100 million users in total, and we have 100 cells, but on average, each of these cells just require about 2 million of users. And this is how many records of these users we have on those cells, because not all users interact with all cells. Only some, let's say we on average assume that user interacts with 1.2 cell. And this is how we kind of get much better resource efficiency, because we are not duplicating that much data. We are just having the data that are in fact used and is easily accessible. But at the cost, or like at the complexity of us having this like a completely distributed system. Technically, if you would like to achieve have like a full view of the cluster, like this main cluster wide, you could probably spin up foreign table wrappers to a single central database and simply query each cell for this account and find like who has this user ID if you would really want to. But the idea is like that the information is distributed, it's replicated. There is like a primary or like a single authoritative source of that information. Of course, like system can change who is authoritative source of that information if it decides. For example, if we start replicating your user account, at some point we may say, it was on cell 2. Actually, it would be better if it's on cell 5. And then we could maybe flip the record in the database to indicate where is like the authoritative source and who can write. But the idea is like you cannot expect to have access to all data from each cell. You're just gonna have access to the data that you actually need to operate. But just because we also work on the fraction of the data, let's say of the users, a single database can actually have these users. So we can actually perform cross noise between users and other because we actually work on the fraction of the data. So there is no burden of maintaining 100 million rows in each cell because effectively you're gonna use 2 millions, which is completely acceptable. So
I'm now thinking about like considering these like ideas, how can we proceed or how can we change, what can we change on our application so that we make the next demo works with that. I'm thinking in context of demos. And now like let's say we want to make a simple demo because we created like 2 demos before, group and projects. And now it's like that means that we have to do the replication of the users. Maybe not selective replication, maybe any replication, because if my user wants to interact with a project or a group on another cell, the user has to exist there. Of course, we have to change the application, sorry, the cluster wide record on cell 2, because it's not gonna read from it's not gonna interact with the cell 0 anymore. It's gonna interact with cell 1. That's something we have to change. But I mean, my point is that the replication part has to be done. Maybe not selective in the beginning, just any user that's created is gonna be replicated to everywhere.
yes, but like our previous demo were about like sharing account, but at least in the cell 1.0, we kind of forfeit sharing user account completely.
Okay.
Right? So I think
so your account belongs to a single organization and that's it. It's not shared
that's
to another user.
that's like an initial limitation to speed up the development. I mean, like we could probably model like a selective replication of like just basically pulling data from. First of all, we are not using cell 0. We start numbering from 1. Cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, cell n.
Really? Okay. Okay, I thought it's still 0. Okay.
No, there is no cell 0. It's actually funny because there was like someone that made this decision, but basically every engineer that I talk with, it starts numbering from the cell 0.
Okay.
Okay, nice. So I think like I would be looking at the proof of concept. That would kind of like follow. I think like that would not build that much on like the previous demos, because I think like we would to some extent we would revert a course on what we did on the previous 2 demos. But basically focus on achieving pretty much 3 things. Making routing to work, like following the proposal, having things that are unique across cluster, which is like the second thing. A third thing, let's assume that you somehow manage to log in, or maybe this is how it works. Like you register and you log in by going to the subdomain. Or let's assume that this is maybe this is like the demo. We have 2 cells, cluster of 2 cells, and like cell 1 is on GitLab test.com. Cell 2 is on the cell 2 GitLab test.com. Router is on GitLab test.com. So basically, I'm kind of assuming that our session cookies work on that domain, right? So technically, you could just go to this URL and register and log in. And somehow you would use router. If you would go to this URL, the router would then make a decision based on your cookie. So I think this would be like my demo. That's like you create an account on serve to gitlabtest.com. You log in on, because like we don't have yet figured out a way to register and log in from the router point of view. We don't have that yet. Then maybe you go to gitlabtest.com and you are routed to serve2. And
I
basically,
don't think that is gonna work because the cookie is domain based, right? And we just did 2 different domains. That's why in like my demo, I had to add a special route. So I used a single domain to log in to cell2, for example.
it's possible. I'm kind of thinking if there is like some other way.
Do you remember how my demo worked by any chance, or?
Yes, I do. Okay, maybe you can do it differently.
No, the cookies are HTTP only, so we don't have access to them in the browser at all.
But I think you can somehow inject something.
I'm not sure. I tried to, I failed. It's just because the cookie header, basically there's a setting where you can specify if these cookies are HTTP only or not. And with that, you don't have access to read or write from it through JavaScript. It's just something that the browser sets. But maybe these are just implementation details.
I'm actually testing that now.
I'm muted. We want to solve the problem of signing up via
Yes.
the router. Is that really complicated? Maybe we can still do it like in the beginning, like if the user is not signed in. Maybe that's what you want to solve with the cookie.
Yes, I want to somehow hack, like to force us to go to the specific cell. But I'm actually checking if the cookie was sent. I don't think it was sent.
Maybe we can. You remember your old demo about changing the. You were like having navigation in the performance bar where you can change some cookie,
I mean,
or
it
you
would
can
work.
change the
Yeah,
setting.
like it would work as well, like that you force like to choose a cell that you are interacting with. Okay, I think I like it because, okay, so basically we have performance bar where we force when we allow to choose cell.
I'm not sure if this is just for the demo purposes, but isn't the performance bar only for logged in pages? It doesn't show up in sign-in page, right? Or I guess we can hack it to show in the sign-in page.
I would have to check, but I think you are correct. Maybe we can force it like to show also on any page, not only because I think it's actually checking session whether you are
Yeah.
part of some group. But I think we can disable this check and show it always.
Yeah,
for
for JTK or POC reasons, I guess.
for the demo. I'm kind of also looking at
I mean, there are Chrome plugins or browser plugins that you can do where you can set extra headers in each request that the browser sends. In the past, that's what I've did, and then just specify which cell in the header through that extension, for example. So header or cookie-based, either or could work, I guess.
you can also change an existing cookie.
If it's
from
not HTTP only.
I actually changed like a value of the existing cookie on the GitLab.com.
But is it HTTP only, or because those are two different? Like, if it's HTTP only, you don't have access to it through the browser console unless you changed it differently.
It's not HTTP only, but it doesn't really matter here because actually, like I was able like to change a value.
No.
And I saw it was sent in the request that when I refreshed. So technically,
Yeah.
it could be like we just have like a cookie that forces like to use a specific cell as well.
Yep.
I'm kind of curious, like, what we would learn from this POC, because I know that this is easily achievable, but the question is like, what would we learn that we would not know
Yeah.
of the time?
Yeah, and I guess what's the difference between this POC that you're proposing and the one we did for Cloudflare Worker? Because it's very similar, right?
I guess like the purpose of the POC would also meant to make changes on the arrays, which is basically making this more
Yeah.
complete to generate tokens that are magic, generate IDs that are unique, which is I think like I guess the idea would be that like we have like your router that is like very basic, so we would have to extend that to support these additional methods. And we would kind of force ourselves to do more stuff on the array side to generate and interact. But I'm sure that this is achievable. The question is like, would we learn something new if we would do this POC that we know that is like a difficulty for us to do? Because like this would actually make us to show. And maybe actually it's not really that bad because maybe it would actually maybe make us the POC, it would be pretty complete. So probably we could actually test which aspects of the application work and which do not work without any other changes.
Yeah, I think the things that we'll end up learning is how the uniqueness of users and things like that is gonna work, right?
I mean, like we would have to implement stuff for the uniqueness of the IDs. We would have to implement magic for the tokens.
Yeah.
But it should probably be like good enough. We would have to extend router to make it actually like a functional to work with that cell 1.0 specification. And I
What
think
would we have to extend? We would just have to extend the personal access token part, right? And
I mean
like
all
the
tokens
prefix.
because I would like to probably then go into depth on testing many functionalities that are on GitLab to identify which ones would be
Okay.
broken. Because
So
technically,
is it really a POC versus actually starting to work on this stuff? Because like there's simple stuff, but there's still a lot of work, right? Like to set up routing, not routing, but like routes table to be unique between cells and things like that. It's not hard work, but it's some work that we will require some time. So I'm not sure if it's something that we can achieve in a week, for example, unless I'm wrong.
I think my biggest challenge and like what like I maybe find the POC useful is like to identify the blind spots that
Hmm.
like the because I think like testing things, actually testing would give us like significantly more knowledge about the effort
Yeah.
of how many things we would have to test.
Okay, so maybe let's just pick 2-3 features on, which is one is the user creation, right? When I create a user in cell 2, if it does not exist in cell 1, it should create it. If it exists, it should fail, right? That's like the normal, like the expected behavior. And then from there, it automatically logs us in. And then we go on creating a project and a group, for example, and make sure that the group is unique as well across cells.
For the uniqueness of the groups and projects and usernames, you'll probably have to implement API for this uniqueness.
Yeah.
So I guess like we'll have to implement some API to interact between cells. Uniqueness of the IDs, you could probably have to basically bump each sequence by 1 million. This is probably good enough.
Yeah, I guess we could do that by hand as well. We don't have to do that through the API. We could like log into the database and alter the sequence manually.
Exactly.
So we already have the tasks for that anyway that we are using for the current implementation of cells.
So this is what we could do. So probably because like uniqueness of the username and group would actually be only when we implement API.
And we need those, unless we're gonna assume uniqueness for now.
Okay, I think my objective really out of the POC is like to have working router in a way that I can interact as user 1 and interact as user 2 and use all authentication tokens to play with. I don't care that much about the uniqueness of usernames. I think uniqueness of IDs we can simply bump, but I think if we could focus on the router part to make it like end-to-end to work with the GitLab and adopt all changes in the GitLab to kind of, I don't know, generate tokens and things like that. This would be like a good material for us to simply go in depth and test various features, whether they work or not.
Okay, so maybe let's describe a bit what we have right now and what we want, right? So what we have right now is we have cell 1 that's in GitLab 0, right, and cell 2 in GitLab 1. And then we have the router here, which is GitLab, right? And the login works kind of. So login works, right? And it does append the session. And what we want is to add to this by adding path routing, adding job token routing, or maybe we don't have to do this for the POC.
I actually would like to test like basically all features and simply have a check mark that I don't know, we have, because I think the bare minimum is like a path and CI, but for other features we could ask other teams like to validate. So
yeah.
I think like the objective would be to really identify how many features would simply work out of the box if we have a path and job token routing, and see if we can fix other tokens easily to make even more to work.
Yeah, do we want to add SSH in the POC or
No, like SSH is like its own bug of the problem. So we know it's gonna be broken and it requires a different approach to handle. So I can forfeit SSH, but for sure we should be able to support Git HTTPS clone.
Yeah, that already works. I tested it through the router we have already, and it works as expected. So
basically, I think like the objective is like validate token-based routing as a feature, or like
Okay.
as a solution. I think this is the objective, and by validating is like figure out the blank spots where it fails.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So for us to do that, the personal access token needs to have a prefix, so then we can look at that prefix in the router and route accordingly, right? Same with the job token, and these are all in Rails, right?
So I think like really like the question here is like, is there some systematic way that we can generate all of these tokens, or like change a single place that would generate all of these tokens in the single uniform way?
Yeah, I have no idea. I tried to do that.
So
I gave up.
this would be probably like the purpose of the POC, change application to perform like a secret based authentication across the all tokens that we have.
Yeah.
And then we go and swarm to validate which features of the application do continue work, which don't. I expect like CI stuff should work. Kubernetes stuff should also probably work if these tokens are generated properly. All API, Git HTTPS clones should work because it would have to be required by the CI. And I know that SAML would not work, but maybe this would be like a good case to validate SAML. Give like that POC to the authentication and authorization group and make them figure out what we would have to change there.
Okay. And the reason we want to test this to see if everything works is to see if we have any blind spots for the Cell 1.0 proposal. Is that right?
I'm looking for a strong argument that would dismiss Cell 1.0 proposal as not feasible, not desirable, hard, wrong, or whatever.
Okay.
I'm also looking at a way to better describe a timeline. Because if you would validate and would identify these features do not work, these features require change, it could guide us on how much work is needed and by whom.
Okay. Okay. So if I understand this right, we can build on top of the POC we have right now, just by adding the token generation with the prefix stuff that we talked about in the blueprint, and like that we can test some features to see if there's any blind spots or proposal. Does that make sense?
Yes, like we'll probably test some initially ourselves, but we could also maybe ask other people to test if we have like a semi-functional POC, give people instruction how they would be able to register and simply go and test the work streams. Because from what I saw, what we push the messaging, different groups started documenting different work streams for them, so they could actually, we could also compile these different work streams and test them on the POC to see which of them would not work. We could also kind of go through our list of the work streams and validate them if they work or not. So that's I think like the purpose of the POC.
Yeah. So I'm gonna need help on the Rails side because I have very little.
That's why I asked Omar.
Yeah, that was my question. Like, how can I help? But maybe I want to ask first, how did you deploy these GitLab instances? Is it via Omnibus?
Via Omnibus, but I can easily change it to be a JTK installation. That's public as well.
Okay, I don't know how like to deploy like like Omnibus with a custom branch or something like this.
We can patch it. I've patched the code to generate like the session key to be different, the cookie key to be different. But if we want to change it to a specific branch, then I can change the installation to be a JDK installation. So it's easy to do, just git checkout.
So how can I help now? Is it by what you described in the document, Camille, which is like having configuration for the prefix for the secrets for each cell?
Sorry, Omar, I read something different. Can you say
No
again?
worries. Yeah. So how can I help now? Is it like I want to also estimate how much work this is, because if this is also going to take me so much from the sprint work, but I don't think there's so much left. Basically, like having configuration in the application that says like, okay, we have a prefix for this cell. We don't need to configure the primary cell at the moment. I saw that in the configuration, but it's not because we don't have any API or anything. So each cell will have only prefix for the secrets.
Yes.
Okay. And for now, only the personal access token and the CI job token.
And the cookie if we can. But
So
for the cookie, we use the cookie key for now, just for the POC. But if we can achieve it, that would be awesome.
Omar,
You might need it for the session as well. I think not only for the cookie, but also the session, like where is the user logged in?
Right now, there are two separate instances, so the sessions are separated. So I'm using the cookie key to route, depending on which sub.
first of all, we're gonna have to use the same cookie key, but different session value. So I think I go with suggestion from Omar, because if you have two different keys, you're not gonna know which
Yeah.
use. So I think like the session generated should also be prefixed. So I think, Omar, I think the objective is like, by looking at the CI job token and personal access token, can you figure out a way to make like a systematic change to all tokens generated? Is there some way that you have like a single setting, and maybe you have like a single inject point that you can somehow magically generate all tokens with the magic string somehow? Maybe it's possible, maybe not. But I think the personal access token and CI job token are actually free. Personal access token, runner token, and job token.
I never worked with them in the. I'm not muted. I never worked with them in the application, so I'm not sure what do you mean by magically. Like, do you mean like all this functionality of generating like the sessions, tokens, whatever, have to go through some component in the application that adds this prefix to them when they are generated? This is what you mean?
I don't know how session is generated, but I guess it's like a random cryptographic number, hex. But a lot of access tokens are generated by token authenticable consent. This can be like a hint for you where to look. There is like a concern in the application named token authenticable.
Okay, let me.
I for sure like a build token is generated and a runner token is generated through that. So very likely you only have to change this one.
But what do you mean by systematically, like
So only change it in one place, I guess.
Exactly.
And have all the tokens. So if in an ideal world, we only have one single class in Ruby that's generating these tokens, right? So by systematically, we only update one class, and automatically all tokens automatically have these prefixes that we want.
Okay, yeah.
So just do it once and magic happens. It's changed everywhere. That's the idea.
Yeah, and of course this has to be exposed via the GitLab YAML file. so that
What do you mean?
Steve, because Steve has to configure like
Well,
this in
we
the
can do
Git.
that or through the file itself, the Ruby file, whatever is easiest. Like
It's
we
the
can
YAML file,
always-
the GitLab
yeah.
YAML file, which is like what Camille described in the sales 1.0 document, and the
if you-
application is gonna read it. Yeah.
If you use Omnibus, it's gonna be a problem. So I simply propose use environment variable because this is something that we can easily configure everywhere.
Environment variable. Okay. Yeah, I mean this should work. This is also something I can test locally
Because
easily. Yeah.
GitLab YML is generated by the cloud native and it's generated by Omnibus. So it's gonna be rather hard for us to configure it. But in each of these environments, we can specify environment variable easy.
And that's why I also ask about like is it Omnibus or GDK or whatever. Like if it's
Yeah.
if it was done via GDK, it might be easier, but I will do it with via environment variables for now.
Yeah, I can swap the installations to be JDK. I don't think that should be too hard to do. Like
Yeah,
it's
but just
changing.
use environment variable. You avoid a lot of complexity.
Yeah. Easier for now for the POC.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
So next steps. Should I close the Cloudflare POC, Camille, and then should we open a new one for these token routing? Or do you want to leave it in the same issue?
I would close
We try to work.
I would close Cloudflare PO like a worker because I think like we didn't validate that. Now it's more like the testing end to end, but where it's executed, okay, like your issue talks about environment where it's executed, and I think that like we kind of settled that it seems that Cloudflare is good enough for now, or like the best choice at the given moment. But the next step is really what is being executed, which is actually the separate objective that we will be looking as part of the POC, which is basically making the routing slightly more verbose to support more of the specification.
Agreed.
So
That sounds good. So I'll close the issue.
So
Oliver, do you
I-
want me to create the issue or shall you?
can you just write like the POC issue for that and like document like I think that the story, which is like using router to interact with GitLab using secret-based authentication, which is like this is like the objective, or like sorry, like this is what we are testing.
It's
And like the objectives I can add once you create.
And the
Yeah.
cookie, this is also the cookie prefix, right? This is different than
It's not like it's not cookie prefix, it's like a session prefix.
even when the user is not logged in.
Uh,
Yeah, okay. So it's because everything is stored in the session, even if you are not logged in.
We're gonna figure out this detail of the POC, how to register and how to log in. We're gonna figure out that. So I guess there could be like an open question, how to register and how to log in in the POC. The objective is really like to test all interactions once you are logged in a system. But we have this like a limbo situation before, like how to get this session. We can figure out that.
Yeah, I mean, can we, for the POC, can we just use this, what we've just done here, like add a special route and move to this like cell 2, I named it GitLab 1, and just go through the login page here. Does that make sense? Rather than use cookies and things like that, just because this is simpler.
What do you use that for the POC?
So So right now we're talking about how we actually get this session, right? So if we go
sorry.
here,
Sorry, folks, I have to run to another meeting.
Okay.
Now, I'm fine with whatever.
okay, sounds good.
Just figure out what is the best and easiest way.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
Omar, will you post the recording? I think it's has a few interesting details after the
Sure.
call.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for like joining on this call with me.
No worries.
Okay.
It was good. Bye.